Infinite Solutions, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up.
Imagine this. You're sitting down to a juicy, sizzling steak. Now imagine it was made in a lab. Does that change your appetite? In a world where climate change is a pressing concern, there's been a recent surge in advocacy for alternative protein sources. Picture insect-based burgers or lab-grown meat substitutes. This push to rethink our plates is stirring up quite the controversy. On one side, we have environmentalists and scientists arguing that these alternatives could significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. On the other side, skeptics resist this shift, questioning the environmental, health, and ethical implications of these so-called fake meats. The stakes are high and the debate is heated. As we dive into the nuances of this discussion, we invite you to ponder a provocative question. Are we ready to replace our farm-raised meats with lab-grown alternatives? Climate change is a pressing issue, and our food choices directly impact it. But is lab-grown meat the answer we're looking for? The environmental arguments for alternative proteins are compelling at first glance. They promise a future where we can have our steak and eat it too, without the guilt of contributing to greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, and water pollution. But like many things in life, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Enter Dr. Joseph Mercola, a prominent figure in the debate. He challenges the notion that lab-grown meat is the eco-friendly solution we've been waiting for. In his view, the fake meat industry isn't the knight in shining armor it's portrayed to be. Instead, he argues, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing aiming to monopolize the food industry, much like what Monsanto achieved with patented GMO seed development. Dr. Mercola's research reveals a shocking statistic. Each kilo of cultured meat could produce up to 3,325 pounds of carbon dioxide emissions. That makes the climate impact of cultured meat 4 to 25 times greater than that of conventional beef. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's a pill we must consider. Jason Nelson, CEO of freeze-dried food company Whole Cows, echoes Dr. Mercola's sentiments. He anticipates a systematic removal of beef cattle from the American food supply, driven by the climate change argument. Nelson doesn't mince words when he states, they prey on the ignorance of the average mainstream media watcher who nods along as they're being told cow farts will kill them. Nelson stands firm against replacing natural beef with lab-grown alternatives. He foresees a day when his company might be asked to replace real beef with bovine protein. His response? We'll shut it down before we freeze-dry a single sliver of lab-grown fake meat. It seems the climate change argument for alternative proteins isn't as clear-cut as it first appears. Who controls the food supply controls the people. But could alternative proteins be a step towards more control? This is a question that has been raised by critics of the alternative protein industry, including Dr. Joseph Mercola and Jason Nelson, CEO of freeze-dried food company Whole Cows. Dr. Mercola, a vocal figure in this debate, recently suggested that the fake meat industry's touted environmental friendliness masks a more sinister intent. He stated, the true intent is to recreate the kind of global control that Monsanto and others achieved through patented GMO seed development. He also added, in the end, lab-created meats are worse for the environment than livestock and will undoubtedly deteriorate human health to boot, just like GMO grains have. Jason Nelson, on the other hand, foresees a systematic removal of beef cattle from the American food supply, driven by various factors, including the climate change argument. He believes that this argument is used to prey on the ignorance of the average mainstream media consumer. Nelson stated, they need something shocking to get people to comply when they try to outlaw real meat, and they will. They're already trying to do it. Nelson, a former member of the US Army and US Marines, is staunchly against replacing natural beef with lab-grown alternatives. He declared, the day will come when they'll ask my company to replace our real beef from all American cows with their version of bovine protein. I've already told everyone who works for me that we'll shut it down before we freeze dry a single sliver of lab-grown fake meat. The climate change argument, according to these critics, is merely a pretext for controlling the populace. As they see it, cows are being demonized as contributors to climate change in a strategic move to limit beef consumption. Several cities, predominantly governed by Democrats, are even considering restrictions on beef sales and consumption. Nelson added, "This isn't just some ideological crusade. We launched this company last year because we saw the writing on the wall and knew they'd try to make Americans eat bugs or pseudo-meat or something worse." The control argument adds another layer of complexity to this debate. Are we ready to navigate it? As we contemplate the future of food, we must also consider the future of the meat industry. The shift towards alternative proteins, driven by concerns over climate change, is not without its critics. One such critic, Jason Nelson, CEO of freeze-dried food company Whole Cows, anticipates the systematic removal of beef cattle from the American food supply. According to Nelson, the narrative pushing for alternatives to traditional meat is more about control than concern for the environment. He says, "They prey on the ignorance of the average mainstream media watcher who nods along as they're being told cow farts will kill them. It's patently ludicrous, but they need something shocking to get people to comply when they try to outlaw real meat. And they will. They're already trying to do it." The potential impacts of this shift towards alternative proteins on the meat industry are substantial. The livelihoods of those involved in traditional meat production could be disrupted, and there are concerns about the sustainability of alternative proteins. The production processes of these alternatives are energy and resource intensive, and they rely on environmentally destructive monocultures. Nelson voices his firm stance against the replacement of natural beef with lab-grown alternatives, stating, "The day will come when they'll ask my company to replace our real beef from all American cows with their version of bovine protein. I've already told everyone who works for me that we'll shut it down before we freeze dry a single sliver of lab-grown fake meat." These are strong words, and they highlight the deep-seated resistance to the shift towards alternative proteins. As the debate rages on, the meat industry finds itself at a crossroads. On one hand, there's the push for environmentally friendly alternatives, and on the other, there's the defense of traditional meat production and the livelihoods it supports. The meat industry faces an uncertain future in the face of alternative proteins. But what does this mean for us, the consumers? At the end of the day, the future of food lies in our hands, the consumers. We are the ones who ultimately determine which products will thrive and which will wither on the vine. Trends in food consumption are not dictated by corporations, but rather by us, those who place the items in our shopping carts and on our dinner tables. Now, let's talk about the potential implications of alternative proteins on consumer choice. The rise of alternative proteins like insect-based burgers and lab-grown meat substitutes is a testament to our ever-evolving tastes and our willingness to try new things. But, as we've seen, it's not just about taste or novelty. These alternatives carry with them a host of environmental, ethical, and health considerations. However, we must also consider the implications of these alternatives. Are we ready to embrace a future where our steaks and burgers are grown in labs rather than grazed on pastures? Are we comfortable with the knowledge that our choices could potentially disrupt and displace livelihoods? And are we prepared to navigate a marketplace where the focus is on market share and intellectual property, rather than on diversity and regional production? The answers to these questions will have far-reaching implications for the future of food. They will determine the sustainability of our food systems, the resilience of our economies, and the health of our planet. And they will shape the narrative around food, from its production to its consumption. But as we ponder these questions, let's not forget the power that we wield as consumers. We have the ability to demand transparency, to push for sustainability, and to champion innovation, and we have the right to make informed choices about the food we consume. So let's use our consumer power wisely. Let's ask the hard questions, do the research, and make the choices that align with our values and our vision for the future. Because after all, it's not just about what we eat, it's about who we are, what we stand for, and the kind of world we want to leave for future generations. As we've seen, the future of food is a complex issue, with implications for our environment, our control, and our choices. So, where does this leave us? At the crossroads of an intriguing debate. On one side, we have the advocates for alternative proteins, driven by climate change concerns and the promise of a sustainable future. On the other side, skeptics like Dr. Joseph Mercola and Jason Nelson, who argue that the environmental impact of these alternatives may be far more detrimental than we're led to believe. This debate underscores the importance of transparency and informed decision-making. It's not just about replacing beef with bug burgers or cultivating meat in labs. It's about understanding the implications of these choices for our environment, our economies, and our societies. As we navigate this complex terrain, let's remember to ask the tough questions. Let's demand transparency from the corporations that feed us and the policymakers who govern our food systems. Let's think critically about the narratives we're being sold and the realities they may be masking. As we contemplate the future of food, let's remember it's not just about what's on our plates, but also what's at stake for our planet and our society.
What do you think about imitation beef? Is it a good thing? Or is it more based on greed from the corporations sponsoring these imitation foods? Do you think this is a good direction? Please leave your thoughts. Thank you.
Infinite solution, enjoying life, no walls, just adventure. Thank you for watching.